There are a few things I wanted to just kind of drop in to talk about. Just because it's been an interesting year. It's been an interesting many months, and I've I've done a lot between the YouTube channel's grown. Most of the YouTube's channel growth has been this year. Most of the business's growth has been this year. Most of the craziest things going on in the world are have been this year. A lot of things going on these days. And, really, one of the things that I've always been fascinated by is just like data science and DevSecOps, all those bits. And really, there are things that got me moving into the cybersecurity space and the ethical hacking space that really had less to do with wanting to become an elite hacker and a lot of these things. A lot of like what got me doing what I do really just kind of comes down to the fact that I just kind of follow what I'm good at, or what I find that I tend to be better at, or where my skills kind of shine more. And I've done that since I was young because I've gotten people asking questions like, "Hey, so how did you get to be so good at what you do, or what motivated you to get into doing what you do?" I was just like, I was a tinker as a kid, just, like straight up. That's what I did. I tinkered, and I've said this in other YouTube videos and things. People ask me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I'm like, I want to be an inventor. And like you're a little kid, you're just talking about like what this ideal world that you would like to see exist, where you create all these cool, amazing things like on the movies, like Back to the Future and things like what you see in Star Wars, and you're like, yeah. Like that's just what I want to do, and I'm sure that a lot of my career is influenced by the movies and influenced by television shows and things like that. And I just remember even like seeing the first Matrix came out, and it's like people are like in an alternate reality where the real world is actually outside of this computer and everyone's living in this virtual. I actually went back and watched the Matrix, the whole trilogy just this past week, just kind of thinking about it all. And really, it wasn't. I never had an ambition to be some big hacker name or some big cybersecurity person or some bit. That was never anything that I ever aimed to do or a goal of mine. I just wanted to do what I thought was cool, and what I thought was cool was making things and making new technologies. It's just been something that I've always been super into. I remember like when I was working my first technology job back in like 2009, 2008 or whatever. It's like they had this scrapyard of parts, and it's like parts that they're like, well, we're going to recycle this stuff, and it's like if there's anything you want from this pile of parts that you want to use. Well, before I worked at this computer shop, I would like go and fix Game Boys and fix broken consoles and stuff like that. And like I don't know, I think in some ways my interest in video games has been more in the fact that I'm fascinated in the technology and the hardware even more than like the little system. So I would go in this little boneyard and like see what parts were there. And I remember that we were refurbishing a TiVo, and the person who was training me was like showing me how a TiVo was built, and I just was like fascinated by this. He's like taking it apart and like showing me like, look, this is a hard drive and this is a motherboard and this is a processor. And then my brain was looking at that and I'm like, this is a TiVo. This isn't a computer. It's not like a desktop or a laptop, and it has a hard drive, a processor, and all this stuff. And then a lot of what drove me was like, I wonder if I ended up helping this company build services around like data recovery for, say, like someone lost data for a Macintosh or a PC and they wanted to get that data off, especially if it's like a Macintosh, and they're like, well, none of my friends could get data off of this Macintosh. I started building drivers that could make Apple read, OS 10 or Windows files and vice versa, make Windows read OS 10 files. Now that's something that's native in operating systems, but back when I was doing all this stuff and I was kind of getting into tech, none of this stuff was like, it just wasn't part of what you get. You had to figure out how to make Windows compatible with a hard drive that you use with the OS 10 and vice versa. And so I would spend time trying to figure out how to make things more compatible and how to make things work together that shouldn't be working together. It had nothing to do with cybersecurity and all that stuff. And while I did do malware analysis and all that stuff, just like doing like cleaning up malware, and I learned a lot about cybersecurity just working on malware day in and day out. But that boneyard, I remember one day I wanted a receiver. And I was like, okay, so we saw this TiVo. I saw someone build this TiVo. I wonder if I could build a receiver, because I wanted to build like a surround sound system, and I had these speakers. But in order for me to make these speakers have surround, I had to have, the hardware to plug these speakers into, and I didn't have the money to get what I wanted at the time. I was like a broke college student working this side job, spending every penny I got on rent in college, and whatever I could afford to eat, which, college life, I guess. But this job, I grabbed enough parts and then went and grabbed a few other parts that I found online. I had to return some parts, and I ended up spending about 6 months building a receiver that would work. It would turn on, it generally would work, but it was very unstable. And then really it took like 11 months for me to build my own receiver that actually worked. And then I was so fascinated by this. I was like, oh. And this had nothing to do with work. This is like me at home, right? This is me just building these things. And then the next thing I know, I ended up, integrating like networking into it and all this other stuff. And those skills, like the networking that I was learning how to like stream stuff across my apartment, like this is what I was fascinated by. This is what got me thinking like, oh, I could work in technology. Like I could probably do that. Like that would be so much fun. And I hadn't really considered where I wanted to be a public speaker, and since I had learned all this stuff, I remember getting depressed because I was like, well, I didn't get the public speaker job that I really wanted. Yes, I wanted to be a public speaker. I had gotten voice training, all kinds of stuff, done all this stuff for years, just to get this type of job. And like I couldn't get the jobs I wanted, and I remember getting depressed thinking to myself that I wasted 11 months of my life on building this stupid receiver. I thought it was the dumbest thing I'd ever done in my life. I was like, why did I do this? I could have been studying during that time or looking for like stuff to make it so that I would have gotten one of these jobs that I really wanted to do. And I thought that I just like ruined my career by building this like receiver with like every penny and everything that I had, this thing that eventually I turned into like this home server. Then it turned into, and then it just kept growing into this thing until I built like this little home cloud. And then that was shortly before I got hired working with company to build cloud, where then I learned how to actually build, how is cloud built in a big beefy infrastructure. Now, of course, like if you just get hired in a network operations center, something like that, building cloud, building technology, working with like big giant servers and data centers, it takes a while to work your way to being able to work with the infrastructure. Like they're not going to be like, oh sweet, you're this person who knows nothing, we're going to just blindly trust that you can work in this data. No, I did have to get a lot of training. It was really hard. It was really stressful. And I remember I needed to get Microsoft certifications for stuff that I didn't understand at the time, which now is, it's just routine work. But back in the day when I was first learning Microsoft, I had to learn about like Kerberos handshakes and all this stuff, and then learning how to manage all of those over centralized networks with Active Directory. And we had a special contract that required me to have the certification at Microsoft because it was a vendor requirement with our, one of our primary vendors. Our, those who are doing deployments had to actually be certified by the vendor. Great, that, just makes sense. The real value, in my opinion, for vendor certifications is that there are certain companies that operate on certain partnerships where it's like, maybe this managed service provider can't give you certain jobs because you don't have a certification that allows them to maintain their partnership. Like these are just like little business things that have nothing to do with your skills. And why sometimes when I tell people like certifications, like are certifications valuable? Sure, yeah, the knowledge that I got from the vendor certifications is valuable, but why did I have to get some of the certs I got? It was because I couldn't take certain jobs without having certain certifications. And so even while working at a company, but the interesting thing I learned is companies would just like pay for me to learn this stuff, which is great. And so it did motivate me to want to stay working in the technology space, because I was like, well, I can get my continued education and just continue education through having, employers pay for all this stuff. And as the years went by, when I started getting into cloud, when I started getting into all this stuff, it honestly just became more and more fascinating to me, because it's like I already had this system that I spent all my money on at home that started off as a receiver, that like my whole sound system in my entire home, like all the speakers in every part of my home were like independently controllable with this controller I built. And I realized that I knew a lot more than a lot of people about system development, system architecture, like odd network deployments, things like that. That when they started deploying me into the field on certain types of jobs way down the road, when I was working in more like the international space, I just knew all this system related stuff that other people just didn't know. And the reality of all of this, I guess, the reality of my career is that my career very much so is my hobby, which is kind of a thing that's not it when you're running a business, you kind of lose your hobby a little bit, because all of a sudden now it's like you got to do this stuff to eat. You got to work when you really don't want to. It's like the holiday right now, and I'm like, I don't, I'm tired. Like I don't want to work 24/7. And on Thanksgiving Day in the United States, because we're in the U.S. right now, like we didn't work, and we dropped on a little bit for Black Friday because we are running Black Friday specials. If anyone is interested in our Black Friday specials, we just launched a new apparel, and we are having a Black Friday sale on all apparel. You can check out our website, notiapoint.com, if you're interested in that sort of thing. And then we also so happen to be running special promotions on bare metal cloud infrastructure for people who are trying to get into cloud, whether you're starting like a minimum viable product and you're a business owner and you know what a minimum viable product is. If you don't know what a minimum viable product is, then don't buy one of our things for that use case. Instead, go learn what a minimum viable product is. Alternatively, we have our workshops are great opportunities for those who are trying to get into cloud security, especially like cloud. Basically, we teach you for like infinitely less than what you'd be paying for a lot of these other programs out there. We just give you the gear to learn more the way that I learn. The way that I learn is just by doing things. I'm like, oh, sweet. So I have this thing, and I have guides, and I have stuff to provide me guidance. So I provide insights and guidance, and I provide basically business training around the technical bits, because really what I have learned across my career is that like my technical kung fu's been valuable, and I've learned that, I guess, I don't know, according to other people around me, they say that I'm very technical. Started to take people's word. I have imposter syndrome issues. I used to fight people, and I'm like, no, I'm really not that. No, people tell me I am, so I'll just take what people tell me, because whatever. If other people say I'm something, they probably know better than I do, because your own perception of yourself is that whatever we do as ourselves, whoever I am or whoever you are, we think of what we do ourselves as common, and I'm aware of that. So I don't think of anything that I do as anything more than like, oh, it's just like, it's for anyone living your own life. Whatever is part of your own life, you probably think of whatever you experience and the things that you do as common or normal or routine or all that good stuff. And really, one of the big benefits of talking to other people and learning from other people, and one of the benefits I learned like going through my career, is just like you learn a lot about yourself by experiencing being around other people, talking to other people, hearing what other people have to say about you, and also seeing what they think about themselves, and seeing, if there's someone who you look up to and respect, get in their head and ask them like, well, what do they really think about themselves? It's one of the most fascinating things you'll find is getting into the head of those who are not you, and then even seeing what it can be uncomfortable when people tell you what they think of you, because like, I mean, I'm a scatterbrain. I tend to be like all over the place and stuff like that. Now I do have like disabilities and things, so that makes it real complicated for me. My mobility is restricted in ways that are like random and stuff like that. So for me, some of it's health related. But still, I tend to rant. Is probably one of the reasons why I do well just talking on camera, is because I have a tendency to rant, and so I've learned in conversations to listen more than you talk. It's a very valuable trait. It's not always easy for me to do. Even I've talked to a bunch of other people who do well just like talking on camera, and they say the same thing. They're like, "Oh yeah, I can just talk." I didn't even always feel comfortable talking on camera. A lot of that came from just doing it a lot. Now I've been doing YouTube for a while. I've been training people for a while now. I've been running the business for almost 4 years, and going back to why do I keep going back to cloud? I was thinking about this because while cybersecurity has been an element of my career, I did malware analysis, I got into some of these other things. Really, my career has always been centered around development. I helped with being a part of the re-release of Final Fantasy XIV in that beta community, and I was involved with like development stuff and like really helped provide a lot of funding for like Warframe. And like this is stuff that I don't talk about very often, but it's like on the side while I'm doing like, working a job, I'm like funding video games and helping people develop video games and building home entertainment things and building my own, receivers and building my own home clouds and, taking the things that I learned how to build in the corporate environment and try to make my own version at home for automating my smart home, you name it. So really, I hate to say that I chose my career. In a lot of ways, I feel like careers kind of choose us as individuals. I don't know how many people believe that sort of thing. I guess it depends on what you do. Some people don't necessarily know what they want to do, or some people aren't even passionate about work. If you're passionate about like family and other things, you'd probably rather be having just an outstanding time with the family, doing all this other stuff. And, who cares about what's going on work-wise? Go into work, clock in, clock out, do what you need to do, and go, take your PTO and do some fun stuff. Everyone has different preferences. But if you're a career person or, you find something that so happens to be capable of producing you money that you like to do, it's just the thing that really got me into everything that I do is it's really hard to find other things to talk about when you make your career your hobby. Like right now, all I want to talk about are these things we made. And I understand that while on the outside it looks like I'm just talking about like marketing or whatever, like, oh, we're trying to sell these things. Well, not it doesn't really work that way. Like this is my hobby, is coming up with ways to create new technologies. This is nothing new for me. Like I built my own TV stand, right? And then I built my own receiver in my TV stand, right? And then I built random things that are in there. I built my own DVD player. The DVD player that I use is I built it myself. Like my Blu-ray player, I guess. Not DVD player. And none of those things are necessarily the fanciest things on the planet or the fanciest thing in the world. But the reality is, like, I make whatever I want on a regular basis. Like, I just make random electronics. But the thing is, I get interested in spending time making things that interest me. And so you'd better believe that when I discovered that, like, I could build, like, enterprise-grade cloud and basically, like, data science structures and architectures, like, on a consumer grade budget. And I mean like a consumer grade budget where it's like, let's say that you want to start a business for $1,000, where you're learning all the things you need to know, you're getting all the gear that you need to at least launch pad, all this stuff. Like I'm talking about start a whole business. I'm not talking where you're like, you can launch pad a whole career off of what we produce, where you'll learn the things that like literally no one knows unless they do this stuff. And then I've done it professionally. So think about it. It's like I'm trained both collegiately, because even after I went to college for business and theater and communications, which are all different degrees and whatever, I did continued studies, and I did master's studies for cybersecurity related things, and I've done studies from like SANS and you name it. And so I'm just like a forever learner. I like to learn about electronics and how to build them and the science behind them. And I'm an obsessive, I guess I'm a data scientist at heart. I remember when I started learning data science, I was determined to be a data scientist. And I don't know why data scientists never stuck in like the title that I wanted to push toward. I always ended up going back towards cybersecurity, just because cybersecurity has always been kind of easier to market and things like that, and it sounds exciting and all that stuff. But really, like cybersecurity aside, DevSecOps is my jam. The reason why I love DevSecOps, not just data science, is because like development, like I love cloud development, right? That's data science. This is data science, being like, how can I turn this into a cloud and then set it up to where like I can scale it out by just be like, oh, we hired someone else or whatever, and we want to scale out our cloud resources for that person. Here, person, take one for you. And then it's like, oh, we got another person, one for you. And then every time we just give these people these systems, now that I've got this infrastructure up and running, it's just like a cloud that scales with your people. You hire someone, you give them the appliance, and then you can use this as a router, basically. So far as the user's concerned, they don't have to know how it works. But so far as the developers are concerned, it is a thing that lets you build and engineer an entire cloud for an entire company, host, manage. And for me, this is very much so a hobby thing that it was born from like career plus hobby equals making random stuff, which it's not random because I saw a market opportunity, which is why we like these are actually used in the real world already. Like we have people who are building cloud with these, deploying these, and it's not even about our appliances or what we do. It's just I've been thinking, it's like, why do I do this stuff? And it's really hard for me to want to talk about different things like outside of business in a lot of ways, because the day I decided to turn my hobby into my business was kind of like the day that the only thing that I ever really talk about is business, which is a stressful thing, because it's like I want to be able to talk about what I think is fun and kind of leave business out of it, but I also want to be able to, like, sometimes I like talking about business, but really I want to talk about my toys. Like really, like what can I do with this sweet thing that I made, and the fact that it has like a Noctua fan in it, which like no one knows what a Noctua fan is. Well, some people, if you're in the developer market or the like PC builder market, you probably know what a Noctua is, just like a high-end fan. And one thing that like our team's super excited about is so our CTO Jordan Anderson, we've been playing around with these because like yeah, of course we built these ourselves, right? So Jordan builds the hardware around it, and I build like the software controlling and all those other bits. And it's just fun. And so one thing that he's discovering right now is like, how can we build our own like PWM fan control so that it's not just like a fan. We chose these fans because they're silent, and even if they just run at full power to keep this like overclocked system, like this system's designed to be overclocked. Why is it designed to be overclocked, and why is that fine? It's got a super powerful, super quiet fan on here, so it's both powerful and quiet. Now, to me, that's like nerding out. Like I'm like, I just build what I think is going to be like the coolest thing, and then I use it. So like I'm using my own infrastructure. Like this is the one that's more like the demo one that I do stuff with. But like as you can see right here, I've got like my little cluster showing on the screen. It's showing it's just like one of my little test environments, and this thing's running on it's got an SD card in it, but it's actually running on a solid state that has a lot of storage on it. This is about not that much storage, I guess. It's only half a terabyte. To some people that might be a lot of storage. When you're working with big data, that's not a lot of storage. I've had people tell me that 64 gigabytes is not a lot, that 64 gigabytes of storage is plenty of storage for development. It's plenty of storage for development if you're not doing big data, like big data analytics and data science. So I would say that's accurate for certain types of projects, but I love big data. Like I worked in the security information event management space, and I like to basically like come up with like data condensing models and like data compressing stuff, and coming up with ways to use machine learning to make machine learning kind of like help manage and sift out priorities. Like to me, it's like a puzzle. But like I said, the problem I run into is it's like I don't really like to sell even. Like that's another problem, is like I'm running a business. All I want to do is build cool things that my business can use, which inevitably benefit other people, because this is one of the cheapest and most affordable ways to deploy your own systems. It's especially affordable for us because we build everything from ground zero pretty much. Like we do our own materials engineering. Like I mean, we have like some of our old prototype work is just like coming up with our cases, and like sure, you can do this with a 3D printer, but someone's got to do, like, we do testing. Like we've tested, oh have mercy, so many models, and like before applying color, we just we print generic models, and like all of you don't necessarily know the sheer amount of effort that goes into making this exist, right? To go from having this little mock right here, and this is a mock-up for our upcoming business model. Notice that it has a little rail right here for sliding in SSD solid state hard drives. This one's a little more oriented for using with like a NAS or something. No one even knows what I'm talking about. That's the other thing. I partly wanted to start a business so I could find ways to meet other people who like this stuff and know what I'm talking about. So I don't know. Anyways, so there's some things to think about. But what I will say is, the stuff that we teach, I don't know. Yes, you can make a ton of money doing what we can teach. You can take our programs and launch a business for less money than almost any other way to launch a business, with creating your own hosted assets, all that stuff. Like I said, what drew me to this, it's my hobby. Like, it's just what I do. I like to build products and then learn how to like sell the products and help people do things with it. I just like to help people make cool stuff. I don't know. So that's probably the worst sales pitch on the planet, because I don't know. It's not really. It's like Black Friday weekend, and I feel like I should be on here like, hey everyone, it's Black Friday. You should buy everything we have. I really don't care if you buy what we have. That sounds bad. That's the worst thing for a CEO to say. What I do care about is if it's going to change your life, come buy from us and jam with us, because really, who do I want to buy from us? People who I want to hang out with. If you don't think that I'm the kind of person you want to hang out with and talk to, then it's probably not because I spend a lot of time with my people. Come into the DevSecOps dojo, come hang out with us. We be building stuff, we be jamming, and really, I did a sprint last weekend, and that's my definition of fun. I'm like, all right, DevSecOps dojo, let's go. So I launched this DevSecOps dojo where it's like, we gotta build stuff, we gotta build cool things, we gotta build new products. Like, and I wanted to show off the fact that it's like, I like this stuff, so it's like in a weekend, we built an entire DLC expansion in a weekend and released it just to show how easy it is to like build and host cloud products. And when we released the expansion, like, no one's classes went offline for even a day. We didn't have to put up a window saying, like, classroom under maintenance, you can't access our resources, right? We didn't have to do anything like that because we work with continuous technologies. I teach how to develop on continuous technologies. And so in our DevSecOps dojo, that's kind of actually why I wanted to start doing more of that, where it's like, I get to have fun too. No offense to those who are kind of getting started. We have workshops for those. If you're not advanced, don't join the DevSecOps dojo. Or at least if you don't have some form of, if you don't have a minimum of like 5 years of business experience, even if it's not in tech, even if it's not in cybersecurity, it's just like 5 years of marketing experience, networking experience, developer experience, I don't know, manager experience on a help desk. DevSecOps dojo, even if it's like 2 years, might be something worth looking at. But really, we have a Pied Hacker experience. We have a program called Zero to Hero, and that's for those who want to get to this level. If you want to get to be where you're able to come jam with me. So if you want to ever get to where you can come jam with me, you can pick up our program called the Pied Hacker Experience. Right now we have a Black Friday special where if you pick up our Pied Tinker workshop, which I guess I can just show that real quick. I don't know. Because like I said, everything I'm talking about is like my conundrum is like, we built these things and like I want to play with this stuff with people because it's like, this is my life, right? Like this is what I do day in and day out when I'm just trying to... I thought I fixed this link. Oh yeah, I did fix this link. Anyways. So, like if you were to take a look at our packages, because now we also provide cloud sponsorships. So if someone has people who you're trying to get to an advanced level at a company, or someone you're trying to help them get a job and change their life, we have that. But really, if someone were to come over here and take a look at one of these systems, we build these ourselves. We actually build these in-house. We build them ourselves. We do all the modeling, all the tooling, all the relentless testing, all the thermal testing, all the all the little teeny tiny things, all the changing of the wiring, because these fans don't work out of the box. So if you were to just buy one of these fans and try to plug it in and use it on a Raspberry, it's not going to work. We do all that. We do that all for everyone. And this one is our like ultra cooling kit. This one has the entire inside of this one is a giant heat sink. Yes, that giant. If you know what a heat sink is, then you know what I'm talking about. And it's literally a heat sink the size of the entire Pi, which is huge. But like, for someone who isn't necessarily ready to do the advanced stuff with me these days and isn't quite ready to jam, you can pick up the Pied Hacker Experience with one of these for $400 off. Really, this is the best way to get to the point where you're honestly, you'll have just being halfway through Zero to Hero is overkill for getting a job. So if you want to skip the entry level and you want to go get a fairly fancy job very quickly, this just launch pads you into being able to get higher end jobs, where really on the low end you're looking at like $55,000 a year is a disappointing salary for these things. You're looking at more like $80,000 a year salaries, $70,000 a year salaries, and if you already have pre-existing income, we've had at least 2 folks go straight into, you know, from a six-figure career in a different senior space, transition into a senior space, making 6 figures, and so, you know, it really just different people. We've had hundreds of students at this point, hundreds, if I'm just going to be honest. Not everyone joined the paid programs, but that's how you can get to the point where you can develop with me in the DevSecOps dojo, because we have this new. This is what's new, is this DevSecOps dojo. So really, like this is just my place to not only teach everyone how to do stuff, but like what drove me to get here. A lot of it's just like your self-interest. Like if you like this sort of stuff, this is the sort of thing that might be for you. It might be the sort of career that's for you. Because people just been wondering like, how did I get into it? I didn't choose this career. This career more or less chose me. And like because I'm thankful for my hobbies, because my hobbies have given me the ability, like, while I might be disabled and have other things and have to walk around with a cane sometimes, is what it is. You know, I have the ability to like fabricate products and sell them. And I even just did that last weekend just to show off how that was. And now our own DevSecOps dojo, for people who want to know how to just like fabricate technology, especially cloud technology. I just like to teach people how to fabricate things. It's just what I do, because I would just like to fabricate things. So anyways, there you go. That's what I do. That's the stuff. This music's crazy right now, so I'm skipping it. So anyways, I just want to say thank you for anyone who decided to watch me rant. I'm gonna go continue having a nice time and have some holiday time. So once again, thanks for watching.